Rebecca Collins thought she was removing a problem from her bank lobby that morning. But within the next 20 minutes, she would discover she had just humiliated the woman responsible for moving $12 million across 3 states. The sharp clicking of expensive heels echoed across the marble floors of Atlantic Southern Bank as Rebecca hurried toward the front desk, adjusting the sleeves of her tailored navy blazer. At 36, she carried herself with the polished confidence of someone who believed she could identify wealth within seconds. In her experience, serious clients arrived in designer suits, luxury watches, and black SUVs waiting outside the glass entrance. They did not walk in wearing a faded brown dress and carrying a weathered leather folder with frayed corners. Gloria Hayes stood quietly near the reception counter, her hands rough from decades of farm work resting gently against the old folder pressed to her chest. At 54, the farmer's wife looked entirely out of place beneath the sparkling chandeliers and glowing gold signage of the prestigious bank. A few customers glanced at her briefly before returning to their phones, already deciding she didn't belong there. Gloria noticed the looks. She noticed everything. The whispers, the subtle stares, the receptionist forcing a smile that vanished the second she turned away. But she remained calm, her tired eyes steady beneath the fluorescent lights. Outside, rain clouds rolled slowly across the Georgia sky, while expensive cars lined the curb in front of the bank's towering glass windows. "Can I help you?" the young receptionist finally asked, her tone polite but impatient. "I'm here to open a commercial account," Gloria answered softly, "and arrange a transfer." The receptionist glanced at Gloria's clothes again before typing slowly into the system. "Do you currently have an account with Atlantic Southern?" "Not yet." "And what kind of transfer are we talking about?" Gloria hesitated only briefly. "A large one." The receptionist's fingers stopped moving. Her eyes flickered toward Rebecca Collins across the lobby. Moments later, Rebecca approached with the controlled smile she reserved for difficult situations. Her blonde hair was pulled into a perfect bun, not a strand out of place. "Good morning, ma'am," Rebecca said smoothly. "Atlantic Southern handles high-value commercial clients. Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable at one of our rural branches." The lobby grew strangely quiet. Gloria looked at Rebecca for a long moment without speaking. Then, very slowly, she placed the worn leather folder onto the polished marble counter. And that was the exact moment everything inside the bank began to change. Rebecca's polished smile remained frozen as Gloria slowly opened the worn leather folder on the marble counter. Inside were neatly organized documents, property records, wire instructions, and a stack of papers thick enough to catch the attention of several nearby employees. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across Rebecca's face, but years of arrogance quickly pushed it away. She had dealt with confused customers before. Elderly people who misunderstood account balances. Small business owners exaggerating their importance. Farmers who believed owning land automatically made them wealthy. In Rebecca's mind, Gloria Hayes fit perfectly into that category. "Ma'am," Rebecca said carefully, lowering her voice into something almost patronizing. "Commercial accounts involving large transfers usually require appointments with our investment division." Gloria rested both hands gently against the counter. "I was told everything could be handled this morning." Rebecca glanced down at the documents without truly reading them. Her attention stayed fixed on Gloria's faded sleeves and inexpensive shoes. "And who exactly referred you to Atlantic Southern?" she asked. "Daniel Mercer." That answer caused the receptionist nearby to look up immediately. Daniel Mercer was not some ordinary branch employee. He was the regional director overseeing banks across 3 states. Rebecca's expression tightened slightly before she recovered. "Mr. Mercer is extremely busy," she replied. "I seriously doubt he personally arranged this." Gloria did not argue. She simply slid a single document across the counter. Rebecca barely looked at it before pushing it back. With 2 fingers. "I think there may have been some misunderstanding." Around them, the bank lobby carried on with its quiet rhythm. Keyboards clicked. Phones rang softly. Expensive shoes crossed polished floors. Yet a strange tension had started building beneath the surface, subtle but unmistakable. A middle-aged man seated nearby lowered his newspaper, watching the interaction unfold. Even the security guard near the entrance shifted uncomfortably as Rebecca's tone grew colder. "Atlantic Southern manages portfolios for high-net-worth individuals and corporate clients," Rebecca continued. Large agricultural deposits can usually be handled by smaller institutions more familiar with local farming operations. The words landed exactly as intended. A dismissal wrapped in professional language. Gloria's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the folder. Years under the Georgia sun had left those hands weathered and scarred, but steady. "My husband and I are not looking for a local farming account," she said quietly. Rebecca let out a soft breath through her nose, already losing patience. "Then perhaps you should explain exactly what you were trying to transfer." Gloria looked directly into her eyes for the first time since entering the bank. The room seemed to grow still around them. Then, in the calmest voice imaginable, she answered, $12 million. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. Even the clicking keyboards behind the counter suddenly stopped. The silence inside Atlantic Southern Bank stretched for several long seconds after Gloria spoke the number. $12 million. The word seemed too large for the quiet woman standing at the counter in a faded brown dress. Rebecca Collins stared at her without blinking, waiting for some kind of explanation, a laugh, a correction, anything that would return the moment to normal. But Gloria simply stood there calmly with both hands resting on the worn leather folder. The fluorescent lights reflected softly against the polished marble floors while customers nearby exchanged uncertain glances. Rebecca finally forced out a short laugh that sounded sharper than she intended. "Ma'am, transfers of that size require extensive verification." Her voice regained some of its confidence as she straightened her blazer. "And frankly, these kinds of transactions are usually coordinated through legal teams and wealth management offices, not walk-in appointments." Gloria nodded once. "That is why Mr. Mercer asked me to come personally." Rebecca's jaw tightened at the repeated mention of Daniel Mercer. She still refused to believe the regional director would involve himself with someone who looked like Gloria Hayes. In Rebecca's world, wealth had a uniform: Italian shoes, diamond earrings, tailored suits, not weathered hands marked by years of hard labor. "Do you have any documentation proving the source of these funds?" Rebecca asked. Gloria slowly opened the folder again and handed over several papers. This time Rebecca actually looked down. Her eyes scanned the first page carelessly at first, then more slowly. Land acquisition contracts, energy development agreements, corporate signatures, numbers with far too many zeros. A faint crease formed between her eyebrows. "Where exactly did you get these?" Gloria answered quietly. "My husband and I leased part of our farmland for a solar energy project last year. The final purchase agreement closed this morning." The receptionist nearby stopped typing altogether. Even the security guard by the entrance was openly listening now. Rebecca flipped through more pages, her polished nails trembling slightly for the first time that morning. Every document appeared legitimate. Every signature matched. Every account number connected to institutions far larger than Atlantic Southern Bank. Yet pride still pushed harder than reason inside her chest. "One moment," she said stiffly before stepping away from the counter. She walked quickly toward her office while whispers quietly spread through the lobby behind her. Gloria remained alone at the marble counter beneath the giant gold bank logo. She could feel the eyes on her now, but the stares had changed. The same people who ignored her 20 minutes earlier were suddenly watching with cautious curiosity. Across the lobby, a young teller leaned toward another employee and whispered, "Is she serious?" Nobody answered. Then, from somewhere deep inside the building, a sharp electronic alert suddenly echoed across the bank. The electronic alert echoed again through Atlantic Southern Bank, louder this time, sharp enough to make conversations stop mid-sentence. Several employees immediately looked toward the operations office near the back hallway where computer monitors had suddenly begun flashing red notifications. Rebecca Collins emerged from her office holding Gloria's paperwork tightly against her chest, but the confidence she wore earlier had started to crack around the edges. "What is going on?" she demanded toward the nearest teller. Nobody answered immediately because another alert interrupted her. Then another. The receptionist stared down at her screen, confusion spreading across her face. "There is an incoming wire authorization pending approval," she said quietly. Rebecca frowned. "From where?" The young receptionist swallowed hard before reading directly from the monitor. "Southeastern Energy Holdings." A subtle wave of tension passed through the room. Even customers sitting in the waiting area recognized the name. Southeastern Energy Holdings was one of the largest renewable energy companies in the country. Rebecca quickly stepped behind the counter and looked at the screen herself. Her eyes narrowed as she scrolled through the incoming transaction details. Account numbers, verification codes, corporate routing confirmations. Everything matched the documents Gloria had handed her minutes earlier. The amount displayed at the bottom of the screen seemed almost unreal. Pending incoming transfer, $12 million. Rebecca felt her stomach tighten. Across the marble lobby, Gloria Hayes remained seated quietly in one of the leather waiting chairs near the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass behind her while she folded her weathered hands neatly in her lap. She did not look nervous. She did not look excited. She simply waited with the calm patience of someone who had spent a lifetime watching crops grow one season at a time. Nearby customers were no longer pretending not to stare. The same people who had silently judged her when she walked through the front doors now whispered carefully among themselves. Rebecca glanced toward Gloria again, but this time the image in front of her no longer matched the assumptions she had made earlier that morning. Before she could speak, a tall man in a charcoal suit hurried out from the private elevator near the executive offices upstairs. His pace was fast enough to turn every head in the lobby. Daniel Mercer rarely visited branch floors personally unless something extremely important was happening. The moment he spotted Gloria seated quietly by the rain-covered windows, his entire expression changed. "Mrs. Hayes," he said immediately, walking straight toward her. "I am deeply sorry for the delay." The lobby went completely silent. Rebecca stood frozen behind the marble counter as Daniel Mercer himself extended both hands toward the farmer's wife she had nearly sent away less than 30 minutes earlier. Rebecca Collins had spent years dreaming about becoming regional vice president at Atlantic Southern Bank. But at that moment, standing behind the marble counter while Daniel Mercer personally greeted Gloria Hayes, she felt something unfamiliar creeping into her chest. Fear. Daniel shook Gloria's hand warmly, his polished shoes reflecting against the bright marble floors as rain continued sliding down the giant glass windows behind them. "Mrs. Hayes, I cannot apologize enough for the inconvenience this morning," he said. "Your transfer has already been prioritized." Gloria gave a small nod. "Thank you, Mr. Mercer." The contrast in the room was impossible to ignore now. Just 30 minutes earlier, Gloria had been treated like an unwelcome interruption. Now the highest-ranking executive in the building stood beside her like she was the most important client the bank had seen all year. Employees whispered quietly behind computer screens, while customers openly watched the scene unfold. Rebecca forced herself to step forward. "Mr. Mercer," she said carefully, trying to recover her professional composure. "There appears to have been some confusion regarding the documentation." Daniel slowly turned toward her. The warmth disappeared from his expression. Almost instantly. "Confusion?" he repeated. Rebecca swallowed. The account review process was incomplete when Mrs. Hayes first arrived. Daniel looked down at the stack of papers still clutched in Rebecca's hands. "These documents were sent to your branch 3 days ago," he said evenly. "I personally approved this transfer yesterday afternoon." Rebecca felt the color drain from her face. The receptionist nearby lowered her eyes immediately. Nobody in the lobby moved. Nobody even pretended to work anymore. Daniel's voice remained calm, but every word landed heavily in the silent room. "Do you understand how long Atlantic Southern has been trying to secure the Hayes agricultural accounts?" Rebecca said nothing, because she did not know. She had never heard the name Hayes before this morning. Daniel glanced back toward Gloria with visible respect. "Mrs. Hayes and her husband own over 8,000 acres across southern Georgia," he explained. "Their land agreement with Southeastern Energy is one of the largest renewable development projects in the region." A soft murmur spread through the lobby. Rebecca blinked slowly as pieces finally began falling into place inside her mind. The old dress, the weathered hands, the quiet voice. She had mistaken simplicity for weakness. Gloria remained seated calmly beside the window while thunder rolled faintly outside. She did not look proud. She did not look angry. That somehow made the humiliation even worse for Rebecca. Daniel extended his arm politely toward the private executive offices upstairs. "Mrs. Hayes, your conference room is ready whenever you are." Gloria stood slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from her faded sleeves. Then she looked directly at Rebecca Collins one final time. "My husband always says the easiest way to recognize character," Gloria said softly, "is by watching how people treat someone they believe cannot help them." The room went silent again. This time, even Rebecca could not look away. Rebecca Collins remained frozen beside the marble counter long after Gloria Hayes disappeared into the private executive hallway with Daniel Mercer. The polished lobby that had once felt comfortably predictable now seemed painfully quiet. Employees avoided eye contact with her while pretending to focus on their computer screens. Even the customers waiting in line carried a different energy now, their earlier amusement replaced with uncomfortable silence. Rebecca slowly looked down at the documents still sitting on the counter. 8,000 acres. Energy contracts. Investment portfolios. Multi-million-dollar land holdings spread across southern Georgia. The numbers no longer felt abstract. They felt humiliating. One of the younger tellers finally spoke in a cautious whisper. "I did not know farmers could own that much land." Another employee answered quietly. "Old family farmland sometimes becomes worth millions when developers move in." Rebecca said nothing. Her reflection stared back at her faintly from the polished marble floor beneath the bright, white lights overhead. For years, she had trained herself to recognize wealth instantly. Expensive watches, luxury handbags, designer shoes. She had built her entire career around reading people within seconds. Yet somehow she completely missed the quiet woman whose assets now exceeded many of the bank's corporate clients combined. Upstairs, behind frosted glass conference room doors, Gloria sat calmly beside Daniel Mercer while assistants hurried in and out carrying paperwork. The $12 million transfer had already triggered internal notifications across multiple branches. Senior executives who normally ignored local operations were suddenly calling nonstop. But Gloria herself looked untouched by the chaos surrounding her. She simply listened quietly while Daniel reviewed account options and investment protections. "Mrs. Hayes," Daniel said respectfully, "Atlantic Southern would be honored to handle all future transactions for your family." Gloria folded her hands neatly in her lap. "My husband and I spent 40 years working that land," she answered softly. "We are not interested in showing off wealth, Mr. Mercer. We just want stability for our children and grandchildren." Daniel nodded slowly. He understood then why the Hayes family had remained almost invisible despite their growing fortune. They had never chased status. They had simply worked. Downstairs, Rebecca finally gathered enough courage to approach the executive assistant standing near the elevator. "How long has the bank known about the Hayes accounts?" she asked quietly. The assistant gave her a surprised look. "For months," she answered. "Senior leadership has been competing with 3 other banks for their business." Rebecca felt another wave of embarrassment tighten in her chest. Months. The bank had been preparing for this transfer while she spent the morning trying to redirect Gloria toward a smaller rural branch. The irony settled heavily over her like cold rain. Then the private elevator doors opened once again. Gloria Hayes stepped back into the lobby beside Daniel Mercer, and every conversation inside Atlantic Southern Bank stopped immediately. The private elevator doors slid open with a soft metallic sound, and every employee in Atlantic Southern Bank immediately looked up. Gloria Hayes stepped out beside Daniel Mercer carrying the same worn leather folder she had arrived with earlier that morning. Nothing about her appearance had changed. The faded brown dress was still neatly pressed. The old shoes still carried traces of Georgia farmland dust near the soles. Yet somehow the entire lobby saw her differently now. Daniel walked half a step behind her with the careful respect usually reserved for corporate executives and major investors. Employees who had barely acknowledged Gloria before now straightened their posture as she passed. A teller quickly opened the glass front doors, even though Gloria had not yet reached them. The sudden shift in behavior hung heavily in the air. Rebecca Collins stood motionless behind the marble counter, watching everything unfold with growing discomfort. She had spent years mastering polished customer service, but now every rehearsed smile and carefully chosen phrase from earlier that morning replayed painfully in her mind. "Perhaps you would feel more comfortable at a rural branch." The words echoed louder now than when she first said them. Gloria paused briefly near the exit as thunder rumbled softly outside. Rain continued streaking across the towering glass windows, while luxury cars passed slowly through the gray Atlanta morning traffic. Daniel handed Gloria a silver envelope containing finalized account documents. "Your transfer has been fully secured," he said, "and the board would like to invite you and Mr. Hayes to dinner next month." Gloria smiled politely but modestly. My husband will probably choose feeding cattle over a fancy dinner, she replied softly. A few quiet laughs spread through the room, but Rebecca noticed something important in that moment. Gloria never changed the way she spoke. Wealth had not transformed her into someone colder or louder. She remained exactly the same woman who first walked into the bank carrying a weathered folder and asking for help. Daniel opened the front door personally as cool, rain-scented air drifted into the marble lobby. Just before stepping outside, Gloria turned slightly toward Rebecca. The room became still once again. Rebecca lowered her eyes, unable to fully meet Gloria's calm gaze. She expected anger. She expected humiliation. But Gloria's voice remained gentle. I hope your day gets better, she said quietly. That simple sentence hit harder than any insult ever could, because kindness was the one thing Rebecca no longer felt she deserved. Gloria then stepped outside beneath the gray morning sky, where an old pickup truck waited near the curb. Behind the wheel sat Walter Hayes in a faded denim jacket, one rough hand resting calmly against the steering wheel. He smiled the moment he saw his wife walking toward him. Inside the bank lobby, nobody spoke as Gloria climbed into the truck and quietly drove away with $12 million now sitting inside Atlantic Southern Bank. For the rest of the afternoon, Atlantic Southern Bank could not return to normal. Employees spoke in lowered voices while customers continued whispering about the quiet farmer's wife who arrived in an old pickup truck and walked out after transferring $12 million. The story spread through the building faster than any official announcement ever could. By lunchtime, tellers from other branches were already texting each other asking if the rumors were true. Rebecca Collins remained inside her office, staring through the glass walls overlooking the lobby below. The polished marble floors looked exactly the same as they had that morning, but something inside her no longer felt stable. She kept replaying every detail in her head. Gloria's calm voice, the weathered hands, the quiet dignity, the complete absence of anger even after being humiliated publicly. Rebecca had spent most of her professional life believing confidence came from knowing how to identify successful people quickly. Yet the wealthiest client she had encountered all year arrived wearing a faded brown dress and carrying a folder with worn corners. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Daniel Mercer stepped into the office without smiling. Rebecca immediately stood. Sir, I want to apologize for this morning, she began carefully. Daniel closed the office door behind him. Do you know why clients like the Hayes family matter so much to this bank? He asked calmly. Rebecca lowered her eyes. Because of the size of their accounts. Daniel shook his head slightly. No, because people like Gloria and Walter Hayes built real wealth the hard way. Quietly, patiently, without ever needing attention. Rebecca swallowed hard. Daniel continued walking slowly toward the office window overlooking the busy lobby below. Most people chase the appearance of success, he said. The Hayes family spent 40 years building something real while everyone else overlooked them. Rain still rolled down the giant windows outside, casting soft gray shadows across the office walls. Rebecca finally spoke again, her voice quieter now. I judged her before she even opened the folder. Daniel nodded once. Yes, you did. The honesty of the answer stung more than criticism would have. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small card on Rebecca's desk. It was Gloria Hayes's new private banking contact information. Mrs. Hayes requested that this account remain here, Daniel said. Rebecca looked up in surprise. After everything that happened? Daniel gave a faint smile. She said people deserve the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. The room fell. Silent again. Rebecca stared down at the card resting on her desk, while thunder rolled softly outside the Atlanta skyline. In that moment, she realized Gloria Hayes had walked into the bank carrying far more than $12 million. She carried something far rarer, the kind of dignity that money alone could never buy. 3 weeks after Gloria Hayes walked into Atlantic Southern Bank carrying a worn leather folder and quiet dignity, the atmosphere inside the branch had changed in ways nobody could ignore. Employees greeted every customer differently now. Receptionists no longer glanced first at clothing before offering assistance. Even Rebecca Collins noticed herself slowing down before making assumptions about the people standing across her marble counter. The story of the Hayes family had spread far beyond Atlanta. Some employees called it the $12 million lesson. Others simply called it the morning the bank lobby went silent. But for Rebecca, it became something far more personal. On a quiet Friday afternoon, rain once again drifted softly across the towering windows of Atlantic Southern as Rebecca organized paperwork behind the front desk. The marble floors gleamed beneath the white lights exactly as they had the morning Gloria first arrived. Yet Rebecca no longer saw the lobby the same way. She finally understood how easily polished appearances could blind people to real character. The front doors opened gently, and several employees immediately looked up with surprise. Gloria Hayes stepped inside once again wearing another simple dress and carrying the same weathered leather folder tucked calmly beneath her arm. Rebecca stood immediately. This time there was no hesitation in her movement, no judgment in her eyes. She walked around the counter herself before speaking. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hayes," Rebecca said sincerely. "It is good to see you again." Gloria smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, Rebecca." The sound of her using Rebecca's first name caught the younger woman off guard for a moment. Rebecca noticed something then that she had completely missed weeks earlier. Gloria carried herself with the kind of quiet confidence that did not need expensive jewelry or tailored suits to announce itself. It came from years of hard work, sacrifice, patience, and self-respect. "Your husband sent these," Gloria said softly, opening the folder and removing a small box wrapped in brown paper. Confused, Rebecca carefully opened it. Inside sat a homemade pecan pie still warm from the oven. A handwritten note rested on top in rough but careful handwriting. "Thank you for taking care of Gloria the last time she visited. Farming teaches us that every season is a chance to grow." Rebecca stared down at the note while emotion quietly tightened in her chest. Because Walter Hayes did not know everything that had happened that morning, Gloria had never told him the full story. She had protected Rebecca's dignity even after Rebecca failed to protect hers. The realization hit harder than any public embarrassment ever could. Gloria adjusted the strap of her purse gently before heading toward the private offices upstairs. Rebecca watched her walk across the marble lobby beneath the glowing gold bank logo while the room settled into respectful silence once again. And that day, everyone inside Atlantic Southern Bank remembered